In 2012, George Lucas stunned the world when he announced that he was selling his Star Wars franchise to the Walt Disney Company. And without getting too dramatic, there's something of a sad warning from George Lucas's life that I especially want all my aspiring filmmakers to hear. It's what's led to Lucas ultimately abandoning his plans for episodes 7 through 9. But to understand what happened, we need to set the context and consider the history of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Hey filmmakers, it's Ryan. Welcome to the Filmmaking Notebook, where I teach you filmmaking one scene, shot, and character at a time, or in this case, an event in filmmaking history. It seems so distant now, but there was an extended period of excitement and hype in the 3 years leading up to The Force Awakens. When the teaser for episode 7 dropped, I remember my coworkers hiding in bathroom stalls to watch the trailer as many times as they could before scurrying back to work. That's how excited we all were at the time. And during that time, I often wondered, what in the world would make George Lucas sell his beloved franchise? After all, at several points throughout the 1980s and 90s, he both alluded to and outright said that his vision for the story was 9 total episodes. But then in the early 2000s, he announced that he was concluding the films with episode 3. I actually remember being downright distraught when I heard that news. I think it was in 2001, and I'm pretty sure I cried.
What if someone else beside you came to you and said, I want to make episode 7? Could you see that happening?
No.
No, absolutely, positively, you're really closing the door without any
Right.
wiggle room whatsoever.
Right. There is no episode 7.
And then of course, episode 3 came and went, conquered the box office, and that was it for live-action Star Wars. Of course, George Lucas went on to have a deep creative hand in the Clone Wars TV show, and even went so far as to work with writers to craft around 60 episodes of a live-action TV show that was described as Deadwood in space. It was deemed absurdly expensive, and was shelved well before it could go into production. And as the 2010s rolled around, and the prequel fever became a nostalgic memory, everyone knew that Star Wars was effectively complete. Star Wars was 6 films. Lucasfilm even released Star Wars: The Complete Saga on Blu-ray. But what none of us knew is that George Lucas hadn't let his dream for Star Wars episodes 7 through 9 die. During the post-prequel years, he had started the early process of thinking through what it might take to see his total vision through to completion, what the story and structure of a final trilogy might look like. And so, a story began to take shape. After the Rebels' victory in Return of the Jedi, the remaining stormtroopers across the galaxy have banded together to continue the fight, fleeing to a far corner of the galaxy and starting their own rebellion against the budding New Republic. In the sudden power vacuum, warring gangster groups like the Hutts are causing chaos. But in the shadows, a crime lord is pulling all the strings. This is none other than Darth Maul, decades removed from his fight with Obi-Wan on Naboo. He's training an apprentice, Darth Talon, and these two become the main villains of the series. Meanwhile, Luke Skywalker is on a mission to find the 50 remaining Jedi who are still alive from the Purge, and he's also bringing together a new group of younglings, knowing that it will take at least 2 decades before a new generation of Jedi will be ready to help the galaxy. And at the forefront is Leia Organa, rebuilding the Republic. This new trilogy would conclude with Leia becoming the new Supreme Chancellor, and, in George Lucas's words, the new chosen one. But as George was gearing up to begin pre-production, and even going so far as to talk with the original actors, he had a deep realization. Movies are all-consuming, life-altering endeavors, especially films to the scale of Star Wars. Especially when you're paying for it out of your own pocket, and especially when you multiply that times 3 films. George had just turned 70. He had given all of his 30s to Star Wars, not to mention working on Indiana Jones and creating his companies like Lucasfilm and Industrial Light and Magic. And then he had given the entirety of his 50s to the prequel trilogy. Considering it takes roughly a decade to produce a Star Wars trilogy, Lucas was staring down 10 years, pretty much all of his 70s, to finish his saga once and for all. And he had a choice to make. The options were to push full speed ahead into the new trilogy, or let the franchise rest in peace. Or a third option, to do the unthinkable and sell Lucasfilm and Star Wars. Of course, we all know what happened next, but what was the real reason behind the decision to sell? Well, after 30 years, George had just gotten remarried and was soon to have a child. Even though he was in control of his franchise and didn't have a film studio breathing down his neck and demanding a movie tomorrow like every other director in the world does, filmmaking is almost always an all-encompassing endeavor. It's a night and day, 24/7 marathon with not a lot of time for family and relationships. And sadly, Lucas's first marriage had ended right around the time he wrapped up the original Star Wars trilogy, the stress of it all being just too much. Decades later, he saw a second chance at a version of a family that he was never able to have. For a while, he considered letting someone else direct while he guided the project from the side, just like he did with episode 5 and 6, but he knew that he would still be on set every day. And so, George Lucas chose to give up Star Wars, for the second chance at marriage and love. Directors abandoning their projects is almost never the full story. There's almost always something going on that's much, much deeper. And the story of George Lucas and Star Wars carries a massive warning and burden for aspiring filmmakers. And this next part of the video is going to be a warning for my aspiring filmmakers, and it's going to be a bit of a hard truth, something that most people in the industry just don't talk about. Filmmaking is an all-consuming endeavor, often requiring 7 days a week commitments and absurdly long hours. If you want to make movies, if that's like the deep, driving desire of your heart, there will almost inevitably come a time when you have to choose between film and family. I was working on a film the year my son was born, and that project didn't conclude until he was nearly a year old. I was exhausted most of the time and sadly don't remember much of his first year. When that film was over, I knew I had an important choice to make for my family, and I ultimately ended up walking away from filmmaking for an extended season, a season that I'm still on. Being a fully present dad was and still is more important to me than being on a film set. And don't get me wrong, I still deeply miss working on film. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do, but I've chosen to adjust my creative goals. Instead of disappearing onto a film set for months and months or years, I've looked for smaller projects that I can manage myself. Like this very YouTube channel is a specific creative endeavor I try to do to scratch that filmmaking itch while still being able to see my kids grow up. And here's what most aspiring filmmakers don't realize. Well, filmmaking is ridiculously fun, like even the stressful parts are mostly fun in a way, and it's absurdly fulfilling creatively. It's ultimately not the end all. If you have a family or want a family someday, you need to, ahead of time, set up lines that you won't cross, and have the mindset of being willing to alter and adjust your creative goals, even to the extent of being willing to walk away from projects, if need be. Do some people make filmmaking and family work? Of course they do, but it requires extreme dedication and intentionality with your family and understanding what's on the line. If you choose to pursue filmmaking, and I really hope that you do, those will be hard choices. But I have to be honest with you, even though I'd love to be on a film set today, like I still dream about film sets almost every day, I have no regrets from taking a lesson from George Lucas, the man who changed cinema forever, who saw both ends of the filmmaking and family spectrum, and when he had a second chance, chose to be present with his family instead. I usually close these videos with telling you to go create something epic, and while I still want you to do that, just for today, I'm changing this to get offline and go invest in the relationships that are most dear to you. I promise you won't regret it.